Hello, teachers of emergent bilinguals. Welcome to my blog, Linguistics for Teachers. My name is Ingrid Heydrich, and today I want to talk to you about lesson planning for language and literacy. If you've been following me for the last few weeks on my website, you will see that every week I've posted a step toward organizing your standalone instruction with the goal of having your students advance their language and literacy through the end of this school year. I've provided you with the big picture thinking. I've provided you with themes to get started so we can plan thematic instruction. I've provided you with a scope and sequence of skills to follow through the year. I've also provided you with sample lessons, and today we're going to start in earnest lesson planning because most of you are ready to start your regular instruction. And I want to take you through a sample lesson so that you can see what I mean by planning for language and literacy. So as you can see, I've named this new lesson, I Study English as a New Language. Part of the reason that I'm doing a lesson on why we're learning English is because I want to orient my students toward their new environment, their new school, their new classroom, their new friends and teachers. And also because we're dealing with older students, and again, I am planning this for 6 through 12 instruction. However, if you are teaching standalone to younger grades, this is easily adaptable. Same linguistic skills, we just have to scaffold a little bit differently. But for older students, it's really important to understand the why. Why do I need to take a separate English class? I think that's important, especially because we don't want our students to feel like they're stupid, or they don't know, or they're not capable. We want them to feel safe in standalone because language learning is not easy and they need lots of practice. And so here you can see that this is going to center on their English as a New Language classroom. We're going to target it for 180 minutes of instruction, whether you do that 4 periods a week or 2 double periods. Okay, I want you to feel free to make any changes you'd like to this lesson to make it your own. Our language objectives are, well, let me start with the content objective. The students will identify why they study English and what they study in English as a new language. I want them to start developing some metalinguistic awareness around their new language. Language objectives. They'll demonstrate comprehension, vocabulary growth, and oral and written fluency about English in their classroom through listening, speaking, reading, and writing. We're going to focus on the present tense using subject pronouns. We're going to start developing alphabetic knowledge by identifying the initial sounds of target vocabulary, as well as practicing handwriting and spelling and sentence structure through sentence frames and vocabulary use. Okay? So let's start with our warm-up and see what that looks like. I would like students to warm up by writing their name, the date in words, and this is something you probably need to model for them in the beginning, and the lowercase alphabet in English. Let's start with the lowercase, and then we can see if they know capital letters as well, using the correct stroke sequence. Okay? If you feel your students are capable, and let's say you have a class of all Spanish speakers, they can also write out the alphabet in the home language. The class recites the English alphabet together chorally. Okay, so I've given you here some more details, and I had an entire post on the alphabet warm-up last week. There's a video that can show you the correct stroke sequence. There's a worksheet that I created, although I'm not sure if the font is going to translate, so I have to look into that. There's different ways of scaffolding this, so it doesn't take too much time. It really shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. So you might have to just start with half the alphabet, for example. We don't want to overwhelm our students. This is just a warm-up. I had a middle school teacher ask me, but they probably know the alphabet, right? And I said, well, why don't you find out? Have everybody come into class and write up the alphabet, and that's going to let you know who knows the alphabet in English and who doesn't. Okay, so that could be even a mini pre-assessment. Don't assume just because they're in 6th grade that they know how to write out the alphabet in English. If you're wondering why the alphabet is important, refer back to my post from last week where I explain how alphabetic knowledge is a precursor to successful literacy. Okay, I want to give you a warm-up option. If you feel that your students need a little bit more of an icebreaker, they're still feeling awkward in class, let's give them a little hi, my name is, nice to meet you. This is my teacher, my classmate, my friend. I've given you instructions on how to model this in the class, and then you could either go around in a circle if you have a small class, or you could break students up into groups if you have a larger class. This is just a nice way to get students talking with everyday language and feeling more comfortable. I'd like you to move on with building oral language and vocabulary, okay? I've provided a video here for you that I found on YouTube. It's not mine, but it's a really, really nice video about English and why we want to study it, why it's important. And I'd like you to ask your students the question, why do we study English? And see if you get any responses, okay? So I want you to think of your week with your students as an arc. At the beginning of the week, we're going to build oral language and vocabulary, and toward the end of the week, we're going to transition our students in a very scaffolded, intentional way toward text, toward written language, reading and writing. And at the end of every week, you want to do your mini assessment. Did they learn what I wanted to teach them this week? It's very important that your teaching is data-driven. Collect those worksheets, examine their work, and keep a running record. Okay, I also did a post on assessment with all the resources that you might need. All right, let's move on. Let's say this is going to be period 2, which might be the same day as period 1 if you have a double period, or it might be the following day. What do we study in English as a new language, right? What do you want to study? So this is after students have watched this video, they've started to think, they have some language around this, you've provided them with a sentence stem. I want to study our cultures, the sounds and letters, our world. I want you to go through this new vocabulary. I want you to model how to pronounce it. Do a guided practice with your students. Have them talk to each other about why they want to study English and specifically what they want to study. Let's try and expand the sentence. I want to study our cultures because maybe they say something like, it is interesting, it is important, things like that. If you need to provide them with a word bank or a sentence bank to complete the sentence, by all means. I've given you some very specific instructions below each slide. Okay, so this is the period that eventually will become your phonics or morphology lesson. However, right now your students are really new and they really, really need more comprehension and vocabulary before we can move on to phonics. After they get this new vocabulary about why do they want to study it, or what do they want to study in English, let's build in some more alphabetic knowledge work. They've done their warm-up. Now let's try and connect the beginning sounds of words to the letters. So I've given you some specific instructions around this. Let's model this for them with a word that they already know. Use a previously learned word, school. Okay, so listen carefully to the word, school. What sound do you hear at the beginning of that word? Here, I would really translate the word sound into their home languages. ¿Qué sonido oyes? Or if you have Arabic speakers, Chinese speakers, use Google Translate and just give them that translation of the word sound so that they can figure out what you're asking them. School, school. What sound do you hear? S, school, okay? And have them repeat the s. What letter says s? And then you're going to point to the S, okay? You're going to do a guided practice with them. And finally, they're going to do this on their own. If you want to make it harder for the students who can do it, give them more words. Make it easier with less words, okay? Make it easier doing a only guided practice if you're not sure they can do this by themselves yet. Now, notice that I'm not using baby words here, okay? I'm not using cat and mat. I'm using the words that they have gathered from their oral language practice. These are academic words. These are difficult words. These are words that were in the video and on the worksheet. I think I forgot to mention that I included a worksheet for slide 5. So I want you to get into the habit of making them hear the beginning sounds of their new vocabulary words, because now we need to connect it to a symbol, a letter symbol, okay? After they get through this oral language and foundational skills practice, we're going to take them into period 3, read aloud and respond to text. Now, I've mentioned before that this is not a language arts lesson. So let me reiterate it again or repeat it for the sake of emphasis. This is not ELA. This is standalone. And standalone is a content area in its own right. As much as I care about text and reading aloud and asking comprehension questions, and believe me, I care, it's not the be-all, end-all of your lesson. It's one aspect of your lesson. It doesn't have to be a book. It doesn't have to be a 5-page article. It can be a short paragraph, as long as it's linguistically complex text, meaning good vocabulary, good sentence structure. You've prepared your students to understand it by pre-teaching vocabulary and discussing the topic. Now you're going to read aloud to them, okay? Because chances are they're not able to read independently yet, so they need you to model this for them. Now, finding text can be extremely difficult. What did I do here? I made up my own paragraph. I took all the language from the oral practice and I put it into a paragraph. You can decide to do that to make your life easier. Students will recognize what's in the paragraph because of their oral language practice. You could use a source like Epic or A through Z to find another related text that's different. You could show another video. There's many different things you could do. You could take a short excerpt from a story or an article that you found online. So just be creative with this. Again, it doesn't have to be a 5-page article. Okay, so you can see it's a short paragraph. I'm going to read it aloud to my students. For period 3, I'm first going to warm my students up by having them match pictures to vocabulary words in pairs or in groups. Okay, and I created a vocabulary picture matching worksheet for you, which I'm going to show you here. And this is what it looks like. As you can see, once the pictures, there they are. Here are all the pictures that I've done on my slides so far this week. And now I'm going to have my students just draw a simple line from the picture to the word. Okay? How do we make this harder? We can have them write the word under the picture. We can have them use the word in a sentence or in a sentence frame. You decide how easy or how hard you want to make this. All right? Let's go back to the lesson. We're going to review and activate prior knowledge around the topic. So model for the students how to look over their previous work on the worksheets and in notebooks. Ask them, what do we study in English class? What do you want to study? Why do you want to study English? Let's do a quick guided practice with the students to demonstrate how to have this conversation. And then we can put students into pairs to do this little repetitive dialogue. Why am I repeating it? Well, because students need multiple exposures to the language before it becomes their own. The class shares out. Finally, I'm going to read aloud. I'm going to instruct students to underline all the vocabulary words. And I'm going to read with a lot of intonation and expression. I'm going to ask some comprehension questions. And then I have instructions for the independent practice, okay? If time allows in this lesson, you're going to go straight into our writing. So I have uh, suggested that you start off your year doing shared writing. Okay? Shared writing, meaning the class writes together and you're going to write students' language on the board. So we're going to ask students, what do you want to write about? What do we want to say about our school, our class, and English? And students can start sharing out. You can gently correct for grammar and vocabulary and start writing sentences on the board. Okay, so here I've given you some very specific instructions around the shared writing. You can offer some sentence starters to get students writing, sharing out. Our new school is, it has, when we learn English, we study, okay? So again, this is modeling and guided practice. They're not ready to write their own paragraphs yet, okay? However, let's test them just a little bit. Once the class is finished, let's have them copy the text into their notebooks if they haven't already done so. And students can work together in pairs to add an additional sentence in the text to the text and share out about something that they've learned. So that is my lesson for this week. Notice that my lesson starts with oral language and goes to written language. It includes tons of oral language practice and vocabulary. It includes foundational skills like alphabetic knowledge. It includes text comprehension and writing every single week. In every single lesson, okay, so that's the arc of the week. In every single lesson, we're going to do review and warm up. We're going to do explicit modeling, build the new knowledge. So we're going to review and warm up and activate prior knowledge. Now we're going to build new knowledge. Then we're going to do a guided practice after we model this. And then finally, we want to see, can they do it on their own? If they can, move on and make it harder. If they can't, obviously we need to take a step back and see what it is they didn't understand. That's all for this week. Thanks for listening and stay tuned for more sample lessons and linguistic skills in the coming weeks. Please leave your comments and questions below or visit my blog at able.com to read the post.